I think we're live streaming across the world. My name's James Skeeter, founder of Sales Confidence. We got Shabri Lakhani, who is the CEO and founder of SalesWorks, and Sean Hayes, who is the head of business development at Aircall. Can you just let us know you can hear us and see us? Because that's the difficult part. We can't see if you've gathered around with your drinks. No doubt you're all getting comfortable. We've got London. We've got a living room in Peckham. Love to see what that's like. We've got Long Island, New York. We got Victoria. Keep it coming. Let us know where you're coming in from. Okay, thank you, James C. Cook. We know we're live. We know we're streaming. Sorry if some of you only just got on this. We didn't realize we set a cap at 500 and we've blown that out of the water. So I'm expecting hundreds of people to come in from around the world. And I'm really excited about today's event because this is, well, it's a world's first, at least for Sales Confidence and SalesWorks and all our partners, that we are going to focus and elevate on you, the SDR manager or the SDR leader, or maybe there's a couple of SDRs in there that are aspiring. I'd love if you just could answer the question. For those of you in an SDR manager or leader role, can you just type how many months or years you've been in that role? 6 months, 12 months, 7 months, a year. So Shabri, before we introduce Sean and Aircall, I think everyone would love to know, where did the brainwave come for this event that the whole world's got so excited about?
I'm so excited to be here. I can't take full credit for the event, but this was a seed of an idea last year when I said to James, we've made huge traction in the industry with the SDR role, with giving that a community and enablement and recognition. But what seems to be left behind is the actual manager of that role that I often refer to as the unsung hero of that team. And I think with the growth in sales development as a role, we've seen a huge growth in that management role. And so I said to James, I'm really, really keen to put together a community for SDR managers all over the world to network, learn, and share best practices. And I'm completely blown away. Not hugely surprised, but I'm completely blown away by the response that we've had to this event, James. So thanks for having me.
No, thanks for providing the energy and the impetus for this. If I'm honest, when we were talking about this, many of you will know that Sales Confidence is helping people at each stage of their career with their mindset, performance, and well-being. So we've been running SDR events for 3 years. We've been doing we've been doing the leadership events. We've been doing the IC, and I thought, oh, this will be a nice small group of people, and we're do a little bit of networking. But clearly, there's been some pent-up demand, and we've blown this one up. So really excited about sharing everything that we're going to go through today. Just to set the scene, today we've got an incredible lineup of speakers. We're spoiling you. We've got 6 speakers that get 7 minutes. So we keep it short and sweet for them to deliver some valuable insights and takeaways that you can take away. Feel free to ask questions in the chat, and they're most likely to open and answer those once they've gone through their talk, because there's such a short amount of time to deliver value for you. Shabri is going to be co-hosting. So between her and I, she'll be setting the scene and providing an introduction to each speaker and what they're going to be covering. And then at the end, she will wrap up with a panel. Now, once the panel's finished and you've had an opportunity for your questions to be answered, don't forget that there is networking time. And really, already we've surpassed 200 people on this call. So that's an opportunity to make connections in the industry. Right now, we're all desperate to get out and have a good time, but we're stuck in those living rooms in Peckham or Hackney or wherever in the world you are. But make the most of making those new connections online. Sean, I'm going to invite you up in a second. I know you're keen to tell us about Aircall. This isn't possible without our partners, and they've been a fantastic supporter as we continue to grow the community. And their importance is needed because, as many of you would have seen, I've kind of upgraded my day job and spending time at Drift, which you'll learn more about as we go on. But I just want to say a thank you to SalesLoft, Varicent, Venetrix, Aircall, MindTickle now, Air Marketing, SalesWorks, Refract, and also Sales Psyche and Cognism. So Shabri, just to set the scene, because not everyone's going to know what you do. What's the day-to-day focus for yourself and SalesWorks?
So at SalesWorks, we are a sales development advisory and training company. So at the heart, everything we do is sales development, whether it's for your SDRs who just joined, whether it's for advanced SDRs, or whether it's for SDR leadership. So we work with companies to help build and optimize sales development teams. And one of the things that, I wanted to put out there is that we are, and we still were, the first company in the UK to run dedicated enablement for the SDR leader, which is why this is something that's really close to my heart. And Sean is someone who we've had the pleasure of attending on our SDR leadership workshops. So we're really excited about continuing to grow enablement for this incredibly important function for sales teams.
Great. And that's what it's about. We want to elevate this key function, and we do want to get into the detail of your specific function. And as we start to build and evolve this, we create opportunities for more networking and more learning opportunities. Just another question I'd love to ask, and please do answer in the chat. Why did you bother signing up today? What are you hoping to get out of today's event? Let us know. And while you're doing that, let's invite Sean up. So Sean, Head of Business Development for Aircall. Aircall have had some phenomenal growth and become the #1 online phone system for sales and support teams over the last few years. Been a great supporter of the sales confidence community. But not everyone knows what Aircall are. We'll introduce you in a bit more detail, but can you just explain to the audience who Aircall are and what your platform provides?
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to do so. I know a lot of the people here looking at the attendees are based in London, where, as usual, it's cloudy with light rain. But I didn't go onto the BBC weather app to get that info. I got a call from a prospect actually just before I came on. Aircall popped up onto the screen, and it not only told me who was calling, but also what the weather was like, basically where they were. So, I know many people are here because they're looking for a competitive advantage, and essentially why I tell that story is because Aircall is a phone system that works to give you that advantage wherever possible. It could be like the 5-10% each month that each of us craves. Basically a phone system that can help you hit target rather than simply just helping you make calls. So as I say, I'm looking at the attendees and I actually know quite a few do already use Aircall, but for those less familiar, as you said, it's a phone system designed for sales and support teams. I don't want to throw a load of features as bad, that would be bad sales, like analytics, training, coaching, mobile, but in real terms for our SDRs, and of course we use it ourselves every single day, it reduces the time that we would ordinarily spend on pre and post call admin, so we can spend more time selling.
Awesome. Great story, great example of a leader. And I think a lot of us in this function talk about the importance of developing SDRs. There's been a huge increase in demand for SDRs, and I'm sure a lot of you are fighting for talent out there. And Elaine's going to be talking from Venetrix later about the importance of how you develop talent attraction side of your business. Can you just tell us one thing? What's the one thing you look for when hiring for good SDRs to join your team? Could it be a characteristic, a capability, personality trait? Let us know that one thing. So Sean, do you mind just dropping off, and we'll invite you back in a moment. And then Shabri, why don't we kick off our first introduction to our first speaker, because that's what everybody's come for.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm delighted to introduce Rob Byrne, who's the Sales Development Manager for EMEA at SalesLoft. Rob recently joined SalesLoft in November 2020. Previously, Rob spent time at Yext, Adobe, Salesforce, and Oracle in a sales capacity. So I'm sure we're going to learn tons from Rob. For those of you who aren't familiar with SalesLoft, SalesLoft is the market-leading sales engagement platform, helping organizations deliver a better sales experience. And Rob is currently doing a great job at building the sales development function at SalesLoft. And I'm really, really looking forward to hearing what Rob's got to say. So Rob, come on up.
Hey guys, pleasure to be here today. So today I'm going to focus on the concept of process over outcome, and specifically about how that applies to the mechanics of the SDR world. If we look back at 2020, we've seen a dramatic change in what we've previously looked at to be successful in the SDR org. An example of that could be looking at the success of cold calling. Last year, with the way the shift from work in the office to working at home, we've seen a dramatic drop in the level of success with cold calling, thus resulting in a 35% increase in email. If I put that into context, I was speaking to a CMO the other day. This is resulting in them receiving a fresh touch point from a prospect every 8 minutes across the week. So there's a huge amount of noise being created. So it's time to change our goals. Now, when we look at goal setting, it's human nature takes over and we start looking at the outcome. We don't look at the process. Two problems with focusing on the outcome is we lose sight of the growth and progress made along the way. And the second is we neglect to create a process that will lead us to success. So when we look at creating goals and applying the theory of process over outcome, we need to focus on 3 key areas. First, break that goal down. For my team, myself, we will focus on getting to a singular measuring unit that we use every single day. To get there, the way we do that is we look at the time scale in which we need to achieve our goals, and we look at the task associated with achieving that goal. So time scale, look at your target for the year. Scary, I know. Remove that, make it small. So what that goes year, quarter, month, week, day, hour, even if you want to go to that granular detail. Then we look at the tasks. What task are we doing to hit that goal? Now, from being an SDR 8 years ago, it used to be hit the phone, hit the phone, hit the phone. We got to, as managers, step our game up and think far more granularly. How are we applying a multi-touch steps to reach our goal, which is we know is successful, but also how are we factoring other elements in order for us to be successful? So are we applying time to develop ourselves? Are we applying time to rest? We know how tough this job is. So combining the two will give you a single metric to go off to. That's step 1, breaking that goal down. However, in the world that we live in now, it's not good enough just to look at numbers. We have technologies that can show us the scale. We have technologies that give us greater insight. So it's about understanding the capabilities of individuals on our team. Everyone on your team is unique. And if you don't step up as a manager and understand that capability and how it applies to the goal, you will not get the best out of them. One typical thing I see is that at the start of the year, we have a goal sheet and we have an individual development plan. If you're a manager, look back at them if you have them and say, are they crossing over? Are we developing that individual? Are we building them and ramping them to hit these targets based on their unique skills? And 90% of the time, people are going to say, we have that individual development plan. It goes into a Google Drive. We never touch it. And we just keep looking at numbers and we don't understand how we can get people to that numbers. Because as managers, that's our key job, to make our individuals successful. So we've got breaking down the goal and understanding the capabilities of individuals. The final element comes in regards to building rhythm. The best way to build rhythm is habits. Personally, for me, I look at my team and I want to be able to remove unnecessary thinking. When I say unnecessary thinking, I'm not talking about creating zombies. I'm talking about removing those daunting tasks of saying, how am I going to hit my number? How am I going to do more calls? And giving people time and capabilities to have creative thinking. How can I do that? A creative message to a prospect? How can I manage my cold call? How can I prep for a good cold call? So I'm going to share with you guys one habit I've taught my team. And it's a process that helps you improve not only time management, but prospecting to a client. It's called the exam theory. So before I do this, can I have a show of hands for anyone who's ever spent more than an hour writing a cold first touch prospect email to a client? I'm going to put my hand up and say it's only once, but I've done that thousands of times. So what I've taught my team is the exam technique. I set the scenario for my team. Imagine you're 15 minutes from an exam. You've got all your books, notes, laptops, everything. And you have to research for 15 minutes and then go write an A essay. What this does, if you put this into a prospecting terms, is it takes our brains away from that granular thinking and applies focused thinking. I guarantee you, by applying this methodology in your first time, you'll see how much your brain reacts, how you'll go to the places that best suit you, how you'll be able to read things far faster and get that granular detail that gets you that key message. Now, for anyone trying this for the first time, I guarantee as well, 50 minutes is going to feel tight. But that's the whole thing. If we go back to goal setting and goal building, is that we have to keep going back and understanding how we improve in granular detail. To my message to managers about understanding capabilities, it's your job to help your teams understand where they can do better. What are the small things? Not just telling them you need to do 10 calls, because that might not be the issue. So to recap, when we're looking at applying process over outcome, we need to focus on breaking down those goals. So small steps versus giant leaps, understanding our capabilities because everyone's unique, and finally building rhythm in habits. Thanks, guys.
Lovely start, Rob. Fantastic start for setting the scene there. I hope you'd all agree that there were some actionable insights that have been shared, and that's what these 7 minutes of talks are all about. So I'm looking forward to inviting our next 7-minute speaker up, Sean Hayes, who opened today's event. He is the head of development at Aircall. I'd love for you to answer the question, what is the most important sales technology in your sales stack today? Pick the name, pick the brand, put it into the comments. Let us know what your favorite tool and technology is. So we're just going to invite up Sean to the stage. We already heard a little bit today about him, but Sean's an individual that has had the opportunity to get in early at Aircall, which has led for a lot of growth opportunity and for him to oversee the SDR, but also the inside sales team now. Is that correct, Sean?
Yeah. Basically all of the above. So I was just writing in the chat Aircall. I was being biased and saying it was the most important thing.
We don't mind that. There is some bias here. As he's already mentioned, Aircall is a cloud-based phone system, but they've gone through rapid scaling, expansion and growth. Now globally, they've got boots on the ground in the US and also Australia. And Sean, prior to Aircall, has had a lot of experience in scaling SaaS businesses, which makes him a great candidate for sharing his insights on scaling high performance teams. So we'll leave it to you. 7 minutes, off you go. Cheers, Sean.
Cool. Start the stopwatch. Cool. Well, yeah. Firstly, thank you for the invite, James and Shabri. I'm really here to learn too. I was taking notes in Rob's talk. I'm really looking forward to hearing the others as well. I think this network is such a valuable resource. I remember the first time I was promoted to manage a team of SDRs, and I was scrambling around the internet and buying books on Amazon and trying to work out what the hell I was going to do. It's kind of like being told you're giving birth to 6 children with a few weeks' notice. And please don't think I mean children in a bad way. I suppose, like having kids, managing SDRs is challenging and rewarding in almost equal measure. But for today, my talk's going to be on scaling for success, as James said. I'm going to focus on mostly my experience here at Aircall. So I actually joined Aircall 16 months ago after a lot of interviews, and I moved over to Paris, where I am now, from London. And before I came over, I had a lot of Zoom calls with our director of sales, Andre, and the task that was set was pretty simple. We needed to double the size of the SDR team whilst making sure that they all hit target. And I can say now, thankfully, that we did it. So I want to give some insights into exactly how we did it. Because globally, only 40% of SDRs regularly hit target, with the average quota attainment of many SDR teams in SaaS companies around 60 to 65%. So I'm going to look at the ingredients of the teams that hit 100%. And I'm going to talk about the 3 things that we focused on at Aircall in 2020 as well. So personnel, progression, and mindset. And I wanted to make that 3 Ps, but unfortunately it didn't work. So we've got a mindset, an M in there as well. Firstly, and most importantly, personnel. So I was actually listening to a podcast a few years ago with Refract's very own Richard Smith, who we'll be hearing from later. And he was asked what the most important part of an SDR leader's job was, and he answered hiring. So I won't delve too deeply into what makes a good SDR, as Elaine will be giving some insights into this. But hiring is probably the most important thing to get right. A good salesperson always finds a way to hit target. So even if you haven't quite sorted your tech stack or training academy, if you can hire superstars, you're off to a good start. But first, I think it's important you ask yourself, what kind of superstar does your team need? An introvert, an extrovert, process-driven, competitive? Your team's culture is the sum of the personalities in the team. So, for example, when I came to Aircall, For most members of my team, this was their first job, and they were still only a few months into it. For many of them, they were all superstars, of course. I know many of them are listening, so I have to say that. But we did lack a bit of bite, a bit of a competitive streak. So my focus was really to bring in SDRs with some experience who were really driven by competition. And quite soon, this brought out the competitive streak out of the other members of the team. It helped drive forward initiatives and incentives and really made the difference actually during the difficult lockdown months. So if you can bring in an SDR that gets 100% each month, great. If you can bring in an SDR that gets 100% each month and adds a missing quality that brings out an extra 10% from each other SDR, you've cracked it. So before you hire, ask yourself, what is your team lacking? You can create an environment that brings that missing piece, or you can hire personalities that bring it in. So now you've brought in a load of superstars, your culture's great, they're learning from each other, you're giving them the best tools like Aircall, so they can work efficiently. So now what? Well, SDR teams are quite unique in the sense that nobody wants to be in them for more than 18 months. So don't take it personally, but every single one of your SDRs wants to leave your team at some point. It's just the way of the SDR. The number one question you get asked in interviews is about progression. They're basically asking when they can lead the team before they bloody joined it. And that's fine, really, because SDRs are the next generation of the company. And you need to plan for that. You need a career path that allows for progression and growth within the team, as well as a clear path out of it, whether it be to AE, success, partnership or product. So at Aircall, we created a 4-tier system within the SDR team, from associate to SDR to senior and then expert. There's also a greater earning potential at each step. Also, these tiers give you the flexibility to bring in more senior SDRs. And these milestones, they represent an important sense of momentum and development, and which without this, you'll basically have SDRs getting to 8 months and thinking, okay, I'm a senior, what's next? And you can't hit target with a team of SDRs that are treading water and asking what's next. And what is next? Well, as I say, since I joined Aircall, we've had SDRs move to AE, partnership, success, team lead. You need to make sure that the steps are all planned out for each path in terms of training competencies, but also you need to make sure that each step is earned. As I said, everybody wants to leave your SDR team, but that can actually be your greatest strength. If you create a meritocratic system of development and progression, then SDRs will work their way out of your lovely teams, and there'll be no questions as to how and when they get to whatever destination they choose. And finally, the part about managing people, because it is pretty important. I mean, at Aircall, we have a team of young people moving over to Paris, away from their families, living in pretty small apartments. Then you have lockdown on top of that in 2020. So no amount of daily coaching or new fancy cadence structure is going to offset the impact it can have on quota attainment if you don't manage their mindset. And I might add, I don't do this part because I care about the quota attainment. I genuinely do it because I care about them. I believe that in sales, 80% is mindset. It's kind of like when you want to lose weight and you go to a personal trainer and they say that 80% is diet and 20% is exercise. In sales, 80% is mindset. So from a management perspective, each and every day, especially in lockdown, be compassionate. Be on hand to manage mindset. I have one-to-ones and check-ins with SDRs in my team. And yes, we talk about pipeline, we talk about performance. But honestly, the most important thing to me is that they leave that meeting happy. There's a really good book I can recommend called The Happiness Advantage. And in it, the author, Sean Aker, he says that the old adage of work hard, be successful, then you'll be happy is completely broken. And I completely subscribe to that. I think what he says is basically you need to be happy, and then you'll work hard, and then you'll be successful. So every day, start at happy, and you'll be surprised how quickly the success follows. Thank you very much for listening. It's hard to go into too much depth in 7 minutes, but if anyone has any more questions on these topics, then you can drop me a message on LinkedIn as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Sean. That was brilliant. I was scribbling away frantically, and I can confirm The Happiness Advantage is a great book. Next up, I'd like to introduce Elaine Tyler. Elaine is the CEO and founder of Venatrix. For those of you who don't know, Venatrix is London's #1 SDR and sales talent partner, supporting sales leaders of the fastest growing companies in the world. Elaine is an expert in B2B recruitment And in 2015, she received investment from James Kahn and his recruitment venture firm, Recruitment Entrepreneur. Elaine's been working with market-leading SaaS companies since to help them hire, assess, and train their salespeople. So I'm going to invite Elaine up to the stage to deliver her talk now.
Thank you, Shabri. So as we all know, SDRs are wildly important to the success of SaaS companies. They fuel growth, drive ARR, and are the future commercial stars in training for the org. They can vary hugely in output. And when I challenge you to think about the difference in the very best to the least talented SDRs you've ever worked with, it only takes a little bit of maths to calculate that the difference in weekly demos booked, timed by the value of an appointment, times by the future value of the company, means that hiring the right SDRs is £1 million problem. On top of this, with the tenure of an SDR only being between 14 to 17 months in the role, there isn't lots of time to develop missing attributes. And many of the challenges to be discussed by my fellow speakers this afternoon can at very least be aided, if not in some cases solved, by hiring the right people in the first place. So with all of this in mind, why does it go so wrong for some companies? And what can be done to ensure success? Here are my top tips to help you hire the right SDRs into your team. Number one, take ownership of the process. Look at your process and ask yourself, who wrote your hiring brief, the job advert, and the info to be shared to attract candidates? Was it you, or was it somebody in a different time zone, in a different department? And therefore, do these messages or documents mean anything to your local stakeholders? And are they actually going to help you find the right candidate? If not, then remodel them to make them relevant. This is your target and your team. So how is it going to work with somebody else's foundations? Number two, be aware of the time, energy, and effort it takes to create a talent pool of potential candidates and understand the competitive landscape that you're operating in. Answers in the chat, please. Guess how many SDR job adverts were posted on LinkedIn over the last month of companies hiring an SDR in London? 2,500. And just to put that into context, there are only 8,500 SDRs listed in London in the first place. So putting it bluntly, the competition for the best people is absolutely huge. I had a look at some of the application rates for the roles posted. Last year at Venatrix, it took us 62 applications to make one placement. We're the go-to place for people to apply for an SDR role, so I imagine our number to be lower than most. Only 1 in 10 of the ads on LinkedIn were getting anywhere near this number, and there were loads with less than 10 applicants. Posting an advert on LinkedIn, other job sites are available, and hoping for the best simply is not a magic bullet it may seem to be. It's like waiting for inbound leads, and you wouldn't want your team doing that. So where else can you look? At Venatrix, we place over 50% of our candidates via referral. We focus on delivering an exceptional candidate experience to maintain a strong 4.7 out of 5-star rating, over 100 reviews on Glassdoor. And this gives us access to a wider pool of candidates, not just people on job sites. So how much time are you currently investing into indirect methods? And have you created a referral culture where it's encouraged to get your friends involved and leverage wider networks? Aside from posting job adverts, how else are you getting your message across to potential candidates? The candidates that you're going to be marketing to are most likely Gen Z. Gen Z consume video information, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. So how much video are you using in your role marketing process? And is it a corporate video produced by HQ, or is it a real, fun, authentic depiction of what it's actually like to work in your team? It's no secret that Venatrix loves a LinkedIn video, so follow our page to get inspired on how to deliver these. In terms of the content of your text or video, make sure it's going to pique the interest of the relevant candidates. Again, we're talking about Gen Z here. So money's cool, but it's not the be all and end all. They want to understand about the business mission, the company's social conscience, the part they play in the overall big picture of the company, and what opportunities there are for them to learn more skills and how autonomous they can be in the role post-training. Whilst we're on the topic of attraction, companies often ask me about diversity. With tech environments being typically male-dominated and an increasing desire that I'm sure we all feel that we must give equal opportunities to people from all backgrounds and be proactively anti-racist, certainly the intent is there. You can't pay for diversity, however. Maybe you can pay for the tools that might help you achieve it, but writing an equality statement and adding this to the bottom of job adverts isn't enough. Asking your HR team or your recruiter to try and find you some diverse candidates isn't enough. It needs to come from within, and that starts with a team, departmental, or company-wide commitment. The true benefits of a diverse team are well documented, so get everybody bought in, not just from a moral perspective, but also on a commercial level about the actual tangible benefits of a diverse workforce. With this motivation in place, next review your materials and your messaging and make sure that the stakeholders and the employee case studies you intend to use in the interview process represent this. You're aiming for neutral, balanced, and diverse. Now to talk about the actual screening. First of all, define the goal amongst the stakeholders about what profile of candidate you're looking to hire, and a score system everyone is clear on. So the process is simply not a candidate meeting different people with no real structure and then an opinion-based follow-up such as, what did you think of them? From speaking to hundreds of companies, here are some of the most popular criteria that hiring managers look for. Curiosity, strong work ethic, being target-driven, humility, coachability, and the ability to work in the team, plus that idea to actually work in sales and the reason why they want to do that for your business specifically. So ask questions to draw examples that demonstrate these qualities. An interesting point is actual sales experience. At Venatrix, we place HEPL, so high performance, low experience candidates with our clients, despite their initial requests for people with 6 to 12 months experience. And as a general rule, we find that new to market candidates outshine those with commercial experience in our process. And with the aforementioned 14 to 17 months tenure of an SDR and an SDR role, where is your experienced candidate you're assessing on that journey? And if they haven't managed to make the next step, then why? If that speaks to you, then make sure your questions are going to test for attributes, potential, and instinct as opposed to knowledge. In terms of a screening process, be prepared for a high volume of activity. Last year at Venatrix, it took us 30 man-hours per placement. And again, this is our sole purpose. So we're likely to be lowering the average as we gain efficiency through specialism. If you've invested in the top of funnel activity and have the required pipeline of people, the first stage can be a CV sift. The second, a phone screen, which needs to be done by somebody well-versed in the SDR role and with the capability to really sell the business. As discussed earlier, the competition is immense. So unless this call packs a punch, tests as well as excites the candidate, then there's no point in making it. With the shortlist decided, we recommend an online screen with the task. At Venatrix, we run an online case study with for all shortlisted applicants, which has them play the part of an SDR, qualifying a client and handling objections. This gives you a sense of where the candidates are at from a natural skills perspective and also an attitude perspective as they potentially struggle with the exercise. You can also give them feedback and have them attempt it again to test their coachability. Finally, a culture fit interview with a more relaxed tone involving a specific number of different people who've been fully briefed on the profile sought. This will give the candidate the opportunity to ask any further questions, get candidate buy-in, and a final sense check from the team. So that's my time up. I could talk about this all day, considering I do talk about it all day. So any questions, hit me up.
Elaine, that was absolutely brilliant. Thank you for sharing. I am completely biased. Elaine's become a great friend and supporter of Sales Confidence. And I think that was your best talk to date, Elaine. Incredibly well prepped and positioned. And let's not underestimate the value she's sharing. She naturally has a service offering, but she's just giving you the insights. And many SDR managers have limited to no experience in hiring, but it's absolutely critical to your success to get that right. When you are looking for the opportunity to partner, Elaine is obviously a top pick for you. Thank you, Elaine. Speak to you later. So next up, before we do that, actually, don't be shy. There's a couple of hundred of you on here. Feel free to take a snip and put it onto LinkedIn and tag at Sales Confidence, at James Ski, and the speaker you've taken a photo of. In fact, I'll tell you what, here's a Sales Confidence hoodie. If you tag me in Sales Confidence, in the next 24 hours, the post with the most likes, I'll send you this in the post. So next up, we've got Marco alfano-rogers, and I'm really excited about this individual because he currently is responsible for building the sales and leading the SDR function at Air Marketing. Now, I'm a big fan of Air Marketing. Owen Richards, who is the CEO and founder, is also our co-host on the sales leaders events that we hold regularly for leaders in your organization. But Marco was with Owen right in the early days, taking on responsibility for hiring, developing and coaching SDRs. In fact, at one point, he had over 44 SDRs under his remit and responsibility. And what I'm really excited for in this talk is having Marco share his approach to driving positivity. How do you actually motivate your SDRs and share positivity? I'm hearing from the technical team that we might have a laptop frozen. Marco, see if you're good, mate. Breathe.
Sorry about that. We all good?
We're good. We can see and we can hear you. You look great.
Perfect.
Put your game face on. Take a big deep breath. You're on.
Cool. So
7 minutes is yours. Good luck.
So my topic today is around driving relentless positivity within an SDR team as an SDR manager. So, it goes without saying that the SDR role is tough, right? It's tough in a non-pandemic environment, and it's even tougher today. So as an SDR manager, we have a responsibility to build the foundations, the systems, the processes, and of course the mindsets that allow our teams to succeed. And I think relentless positivity plays a huge part in that. So I've broken it down into 4 areas, which I'm going to be talking about today. And firstly, I'm going to be talking about influencing a company-wide culture that drives the right SDR mindset and values. So what I mean by that is we need to influence a company vision that, the SDR team is the backbone and the foundation to the company growth and success. I think we need to celebrate and respect the SDR role because, the company will have full visibility of successes, wins, and impact, of course. So we provide company-wide visibility of SDR and sales team metrics, numbers, and driving company-wide enthusiasm and support for the SDR activity. Now, we need to show the SDR impact to the wider business. We like to refer to our SDR team as the engine of the organization. So with the above in mind, we start building into the SDRs that, they're incredibly important. The work that they do has such an impact to the organization. And in turn, of course, you'll see an increase in buy-in, confidence, and enjoyment within the role. Second point is understanding SDR drivers. So we understand what makes each individual tick. So, we can't just expect because SDRs are salespeople that the only thing that infuses them is money. Some SDRs are motivated by progression, others responsibility, others looking for an AE role or SDR manager role. So we have to truly understand each person, allowing us to set specific progression routes and goals for each individual. Okay, so let's build a tiered system for SDR progression, for example. So we know that the SDR to AE role, the SDR to AE step up is it's a massive step in the fact that it takes time. So let's build levels of progression within the SDR role. So what we have is a clear structure that allows for true visibility, transparency around what needs to be achieved to actually reach that next tier. So with each tier might come additional pay, responsibility, commission. So again, what the above means is that collectively, you have a motivated team of SDRs always working towards the next level up. So the key here is the fact that they know exactly what they need to achieve to get to that next level. Third point is around mindset, a bit of crossover with Sean's talk, but when building and maintaining a high-performing SDR team, mindset is absolutely key. So mindset, in certainly mine, is something that comes from the top down. So as an SDR manager, we have to lead from the front here. So there's no hiding from the fact that an SDR role is tough. So let's focus on how we keep the motivation as high as possible as much of the time. So we need to stop focusing on the end goal. I've seen so many sales teams putting this massive emphasis on that yes, that meeting booked, that decision maker saying yes. But let's actually break that down. Let's focus on having a conversation. So our mindset needs to be that, each call, each email chain, each LinkedIn conversation is an opportunity to extract some really vital information about your prospect and his or her business. So if we get a no, what can we learn from that? Why weren't they interested? What was it that you said that effectively put them off? Or, we've engaged with the senior decision maker here. They've opened up, they've given you X, they've given you Y, they've given you Z. Let's take that as a win. So by focusing on the yeses so much, we actually forget to have that normal human-to-human conversation. We forget to ask the right questions, and it's so easy to get yourself in a rut. A rut is what I refer to as a series of no's, and it's really hard to get yourself out of that. We used to run an incentive, as weird as it sounds, whereby we actually celebrated the no's. So I had an SDR join our team years ago, and for the first 3 months of her role, she really struggled. So she saw her teammates around her getting yeses. Everyone was booking meetings, and she put so much focus on getting that yes, because naturally, we all want that yes. That's our job, right? But we worked with her to incentivize her through the no's, and we celebrated the not interest. And suddenly her emphasis on that yes changed. And just like that, her meetings started coming through. Her focus was now to have a conversation and not look for the yes on every call. So lastly, I'm going to talk about leading from the front as an SDR manager. I call it the captain's mentality. So let's treat an SDR manager as a captain of, say, a rugby team or a football team. Typically within those teams, the captain responsibility in the role isn't necessarily the best player on the field or the pitch, but their mentality will be very much first in, first out, right? So they'll perform best practice all the time. Their mindset is key to the team's success. They are the source of motivation. They are the source of positivity throughout that team, and probably the most level-headed member of the team. And of course, they understand their teammates and they play to each of their successes, which is a hugely important factor in driving a high-performing sales team. So we can replicate this with the SDR manager role. So from the off, my mindset has always been, let's get this done together. And I'd never ask something of my SDRs that I wouldn't personally do, whether that's in a cold call, a follow-up, a meeting, or even trying something new when it comes to conducting cold outreach, for example. So we need to practice what we preach in terms of structure, systems, processes, leading from the front and expecting our team to follow. And finally, we don't expect the best metrics and results from an SDR manager. What we are expecting is that we guide them, we coach them, we lead from the front, and we build and create a high-performing culture and environment within that team. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Marco. And you can see from the chat and the comments in the chat rather, that everyone loves the idea of celebrating the no's. Next up, really on topic actually, as we're talking about great books, and it's no surprise that I've got this in close proximity. This is one of the most amazing books that I've read, and definitely the best book I read last year. So I encourage you to get a copy of this if you haven't already. Great for SDR teams, and tons of really useful nuggets in here for prospecting. So that might give some clues on who I'm about to introduce. But I'm really excited to welcome Rich Smith, who's head of sales at Refract. Rich is actually one of the co-founders of Refract. And for those of you who aren't familiar, it's a tool that's designed to help companies assess their sales conversations and identify their strengths and weaknesses so that they can optimize their sales strategies. They work with companies to transform their culture, reduce error, and better understand and integrate the science of success. So for those of you who also don't follow Rich on LinkedIn, I highly recommend it. Always posting incredible, insightful content. And I'm really looking forward to the next 7 minutes or so. So Rich, over to you.
Cheers, Shabri. Very kind words. Thank you very much. So I'm going to go against the grain a little bit, and I'm going to share some slides. So, okay. So hopefully you should all be able to see my slides. If you can just put a little yes in the comments, that would be awesome. So how to successfuli onboard your new SDRs into confident cold callers in days versus weeks. So this is exactly, I'm going to set a framework for anybody who is currently hiring SDRs that wants to make them successful on the phone. Anybody who's in the process of doing that right now, hopefully I'm going to show you how you can adopt this framework that we use here at Refract and get people booking meetings in 5 days. Here's the problem. The problem is that onboarding has become all the more challenging due to COVID-19. We're not getting FaceTime with new hires. It lacks the intimacy of getting to know your new teammates. We're not meeting them in person. They're in their bedrooms at home. They're not feeling the buzz of the office. I think we all appreciate that showing people the ropes on Zoom is just not quite as easy as being in a meeting room with them. And I tend to find as well in my job that most SDRs are still not being taken through a formal process, an actual tactical process to get them comfortable picking up the phone and booking meetings. What's it leading to? Well, ramp time for new hires is not going in the right direction. It's actually getting longer, not shorter. SDRs are quickly becoming like an expensive overhead and a perceived expensive overhead in the business. Many new SDRs have inherent call reluctance. I think we've all experienced call reluctance at some point in our career, but this is probably more real than ever right now, because reps being isolated at home without their peers, if they're totally new to the SDR role, they are literally petrified of picking up the phone. They don't know what to say. They're anxious about it. And so the problem's getting worse. What this is ultimately leading to is SDRs are probably not going to work out. We are failing them at their first hurdle, and lo and behold, they churn from the business. So here's the framework, and I'm going to dive into each one of these. And again, from the point of them joining the company to day 5, the objective here is we get them on the phone feeling super comfortable, pumped up, and booking meetings. Day 0. Why day 0? That's a bit of a weird day, Rich. Well, here's a little message from Sean, who is an SDR that's going to be starting at Refract on March the 1st. I planted the seed with her that before she starts, if she was willing and wanted to, she could actually listen to some of our own cold calls that we make, our outbound calls. And this is the message she sent me on LinkedIn after her interview, saying, would love to get some recording material off you at some point so I can start listening. She wants to listen and immerse herself in what those calls sound like before she even walks in the door. So I've literally given her access to our call library, which is full of just great conversations, great example calls that really kind of showcase some of the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that before she's even walked in the door, she actually knows what our call structure is. She can hear the kinds of objections that she's going to get on the phone. She starts to become aware of what this role is all about at the end of the day. So, and I think another aspect of that is that it shows that young SDRs are quite embracing and quite keen to start to dig into, immerse themselves in things like that before they've actually been start to be paid. Number 2, intentional non-product training. Again and again, too much time and focus is invested in product training versus the important stuff, which is around messaging, talk tracks, tactics, tonality. So much importance gets put on product knowledge training still to this day. And this is not the stuff that's going to help SDRs book meetings. I believe that SDRs at Refract probably know about 25% of our product versus account executives, because they don't need to know the ins and outs of the product. And the reality is, when you train as an SDR all about the product and go really heavy on that, what they're going to do is they're going to start product pitching in their cold calls. The cold calls are going to go south as a result. They're going to get knockbacks. They're not going to get the success. Product training should be the last thing on the agenda. Instead, focus your training on things like ICPs, the reasons people buy from you, the value propositions, your competitive landscape, and of course, objections. How we've done this at Refract is, now that we're part of the Allego group, is we've created a series of video-based training on ICPs, value propositions, even included some customer interviews where we've actually recorded customers that we've invited into our sales stand-ups, and the customers actually describing these sessions, what made them respond in the first place, what made them take the meeting, what made them buy. And after every one of those trainings, they get enrolled in a video challenge, which measures how much they've understood. So I get to measure how effective they are at, how much have they learned about our ICPs, how do they sound when they're trying to overcome these objections that we set them. It's a true assessment and making sure they're practicing before they actually start making calls. Next part is learn the framework. Provide your SDRs with a cold call framework. I'm going to guess that many companies out there don't even have one of these. If you don't, consider my optics framework. This stands for opening, problem, think, impact, clue, and a small ask. I'll not go in the ins and outs of the framework on this call today, but if you want to find out more, there's a video on my a link on my LinkedIn profile to a YouTube video where I was doing a webinar with Jason Bay in the US, where I actually go into the specifics of this cold calling optics framework, and actually back that up with real cold calls as part of that too. So check that out if you want to learn a framework that you can actually train your SDRs around. Day 4, we're actually going into role play and observation. Like role play, whoa, like people still freak out over role play for some weird reason. It is probably the most powerful way that you can get salespeople practicing comfortable and confident. And what I would say here is, if you're going to role play, pair up the new SDRs that you're onboarding with experienced SDRs. Do not pair up new SDR with new SDR. Why? Because they don't understand the talk tracks. They create false call scenarios. They don't know what they don't know just yet. So pair them up with an experienced SDR. And you as the manager act as the observer. If you do this on Zoom, you can just watch the role play out, and you can be there to give feedback as the role players are finishing. Another idea is to use real recorded cold calls that have taken place in the team maybe very recently, so that you can actually use those as the scenarios. You can use the objections that the customers give. It makes the role plays far more realistic. Ultimately, role play practice creates muscle memory creates consistency. And the other thing that we're doing here at Refract, which really works well, is just get an SDR on day four to watch your other SDRs make dials in a power hour on Zoom, maybe for like up to 2 hours. The reason this is so powerful, even if they can't hear the calls, is they actually get to see the velocity and what it's like to make call after call, and they kind of understand what it takes to drive activities. So just getting the SDR to watch literally 1 or 2 SDRs just making calls, dial the numbers, it gets them understanding what it takes to do the job well. And then finally, big shout out here, when you actually let the SDRs loose on the phone, record their calls, analyze them, repeat. We, of course, have a platform that helps you do just this, but this is where it's, I say they've been on the practice field, they've been on the driving range, now they're on the golf course where it really counts. As they're making their own calls on day 5, putting into practice the stuff that they've learned in the week, be that person to just jump in after every call and give feedback on the conversations, give that feedback back to the SDR, and get them back on the phone making more calls. There is my 5-day framework to get your new SDRs ramped to being confident cold callers. I've seen this work time and time again. Any questions, give me a shout, and connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to find out more.
Rich, that was beautifully done. Thank you very much. Hopefully, if it's your first time to a sales confidence event, you've already embraced how much value we share in these short 7-minute segments. And this is by design. We want the speakers to provide valuable insights. But I know also a lot of you want to go deeper. Maybe you're looking at opportunities to invest in your personal and self-development. So actually, Shabri at SalesWorks runs the only dedicated personal and professional development for SDR leaders. And she's got one on the 24th and 25th of March. So there's lots of people on this call that would have been to those workshops. Shabri, if you pop the link in the chat, everybody will get an opportunity, and just share it with your manager so you can get that budget signed off and invest in yourself. The other thing I want to say is every single one of you has SDRs in your team. And this time next Wednesday, we've got the SDR meetup. So the SDR meetup has been going much longer. So it's actually 3 years since we started the SDR meetup. And it's a fantastic, energetic event. And you'll know that because you support and develop these people every day. So what's going to happen now, I'm just going to introduce Tony, our final 7-minute speaker today. Then Shabri's going to host a panel discussion. So start asking questions in the comments. And then we'll go into the networking, which is just on the right. There's a networking button that will be activated so we can have networking conversations for the last 20 minutes or so. The other thing I recommend you do is put your LinkedIn link in the comments so people can connect with you. So I'm really excited to have Tony. She's built up a strong reputation over the last few years of the approach that she takes to building successful SDR teams. So bear with me. So what's definitely interesting, Tony works for an organization called Reward Gateway, which is all about improving, enhancing the engagement of employees. And she originally has a recruitment background, which I love. I share that experience. And she started at Reward Gateway over 7 years ago as a first-generation SDR. So think how much has changed since that point in time. She's also enjoyed and developed herself from an SDR into a manager of the SDR function, and now she's responsible for the head of SDR development. So what's great is she can talk about that journey many of you might be on to develop your career in the SDR function. She's going to be talking about building a dream machine and focused on having additional value and contribution to your SDRs. Tony, you're up. There we go. You're on. I'll leave you to it.
So firstly, I just want to say a big shout out to James and Shabri. My LinkedIn has been absolutely kicking off the last 3 weeks, but it just goes to show just how much of a community and opportunity that we've got. So I just want to say thanks ever so much for having us here today. It's been absolutely amazing. So yes, as James rightly said, to give you a bit of background, I've been at RG for 7 years now. Started as a first generation outbound SDR. I've had therapy. I am now fine. So I was a relationship builder SDR, so spreadsheet heavy, keyboard warrior through and through. Always loved the process, loved the psychology of it all, and just loved to put in together like great copy and great cadences. So that passion, basically alongside absolutely hating the phone, really gave me the determination to hone in on those skills, which my manager at the time absolutely loved as well. So anyways, as Jane said, powered on through. Using my love for Google Sheets and my hatred of the phone line, I progressed to senior SDR, then SDR manager, and now I head up RG's UK sales development team, which is a wonderful position to be in. So I was about 6 months too early into this role, if I'm being kind to myself. I had to learn very much at the deep end. So my 7 minutes today is about the 10 ways that you can leverage introverted skills for extroverted teams and outcomes. So number one, invest in the knowledge of your infrastructure. So I'm talking about mapping it out to ones and zeros. So what clients do you have in place? In what remits? What industries? What has been Q-on-Q performance over the last 10 of them? What problems are you solving right now? And what problems were you solving back in the day? How has your product set changed? And what have your buying reasons looked like and how have they evolved? Know it all. What you want to do is you want to take that information and you want to understand why your KPIs and your metrics look the way that they do now. So understand what's important and understand likely what it is that you're going to have to apologize for ignoring later on down the line as well. So number two, the majority of the room may not be a spreadsheet warrior, but you're absolutely here because you're good at your role, and you're good at your role because you know a certain rhythm, right? So you've learned and you've understood a certain dance, and with that you've executed inputs and you've delivered incredible outputs. So remember that there's always method in your madness. So whichever way that it is that you're coming from, or whichever way that it is that you're looking at, you're doing things and they're working for a reason. So just dig into it and find what it is that your strength is. Number three is know your lead channels, know your routes, know all the variables of your inbound, and know the mechanics of a good outbound. Know not just your KPIs and your metrics, but the conversions that are in between them as well. Like understand the health and how they actually relate to each other. Put a stake in the ground with every single one of them. So like benchmark it all, and you can then look to impact and improve upon them as you go. Show your SDRs how their targets are built. Show them top down, back to front, sideways, whatever it might be. The majority of us in sales, we work queue by queue with targets, right? So some of those queues are longs, especially the end of the back of last year. But don't let your SDRs fly queue by queue completely blind. Like make it less abstract for them. Give them the knowledge to own what they want to be accountable for. So there's some reps like me that just aren't motivated by targets or cash, but instead they're motivated by creating amazing email subject lines and spending 30 minutes nailing the perfect bit of personal information. But as a rep, when I gained the knowledge to why you have like these certain time constraints and the whys, it really kind of brought it to life. And I made a conscious effort after that to make sure that I hid how long I was spending on emails instead, because I really did care about my manager's stress levels. As leaders, it's our responsibility to ensure that our teams have got the information that they need to execute to the best of their abilities. So with education on the sales cycle, you can eradicate the words and the consequences of, oh, I didn't know. So 4 is for individuals. So once you've mapped out your unit and your business, go another step. Map out each individual against it as well. Like what are their averages? How are they stacking up against them? Are they overperforming, underperforming in certain areas? Are they aware of it? Like these numbers are important to them, but they're important to you too. So what are the 10 things that are attached to that section of the sales process? What are the nuances? What is the training that's needed? What's the best behavior to get the best outcome there? Is it a one-time tackle, or is it something that needs to go in a cycle for a constant refresh? So this will not only give you a data-informed lens to coach from, but it's also a massive support when begging LT for sales loft mid-pandemic isn't quite working for you. So it doesn't just give you an evolving ecosystem of training areas and onboarding knowledge, but it also gives you your best trainers on each of those subjects. So sit with that individual rep, listen to them, gas them up, and empower them to the point that they want to bring everybody up to that bar with their playbook, and do it so much that their confidence just goes through the roof, and that like your team themselves actually build that culture of learning. You want a space not only where SDRs want to bury each other on the leaderboard, but you also want them chuffed for their teammates, and you want them to want to learn from them as well. Number 5 is probably the most important one for me, is you. This level of detail that we look at our SDRs, it needs to be put on yourself as well. So you can't confidently tell somebody about their house if yours is an absolute wreck. So as a leader, you set the bar, you set the pace when it comes to values, when it comes to work ethic, the thirst for learning and digging in. All of us on this webinar, we're successful in our different ways for different reasons. So you might be the best motivator, you might be the best teacher, the best relationship builder, challenger, whatever it might be. But whatever route that you're on, we've all got 10 areas, just like our SDRs, that we need to be nailing as well. So do your own gap analysis. What are your development areas? What do you need in order to achieve them? What resources do you need to pull on in order to get that support that it is? So what's going to make your house absolutely beautiful so your neighbours are a little bit jealous? But then also, what's the biggest gas leak that's going to blow it to Jupiter and back if you don't fix it? So your company, your infrastructure, it's all mapped out. You've reduced your team to mere numbers and yourself to tears with your gap analysis. But what's next after that? Number 6 for me is sales development is a team sport. Like, it thrives off facilitation of good information, strong execution, and operational efficiency as well. So get your team comfortable in being vulnerable and sharing what they've read, what they've learned with their colleagues. But the second important thing to that is get them comfortable in telling you what is absolutely shit as well. So friction points, whether they come in the shape of tech, training, process, or even people, aka consultants, they're all disruptors and distractions from momentum, and ultimately what will be your success as well. So whatever it is, make it your priority to reduce the noise and give them the path of least resistance in whatever shape that takes. So number 7 is dedicated to coaching. I seriously was late to the party on investing in my coaching skills. Honestly, whack it on the gap analysis now. Sometimes you're going to need to problem solve and make their dreams become a reality on Salesforce. And I am yet to find an SDR that gives a shit about building a report. But when it comes to growing them as a professional or as an individual, coach, and coach some more. And the simplest way to start is when they ask a question, just answer with one. Done. 9 times out of 10, they will solve it themselves. They will feel great, they will grow, and it will give you more time to focus on the really important things, such as why HubSpot and Salesforce don't actually talk to each other properly. So 8 is growth impact. So your team's pace, its size, it's going to continually diversify and evolve around you. And as you evolve with it, your capacity to spin the plates that you once did is absolutely going to reduce. But remember that the superstars that are around you, they're growing and getting more and more capable every single day, just like you are. So delegate and trust in them. Year 1 is going to look different to year 3. So what have you got time to teach now? What do you need a rep to actually have ready to hit the ground running now to what you couldn't do 2 years ago? And remember that the numbers, they're just a tool. They're not the whole picture. X amount of reps doesn't always equate to Y amount of pipeline. 2 hungry SDRs will outperform 5 average SDRs every day of the week. 9 is dedicated to breaking the rules. So sales process, tactics, they're there for predictability, consistency, for repeatable, scalable success, all the lovely buzzwords that we absolutely love. God love them. But it shouldn't be so rigid that it doesn't allow for breaking the rules and innovation. So if one of your SDRs say, hey, I want to try this risky thing, give them the things that could go wrong, but also give them the things that could go right as well, and let them make the decision. The biggest buzzes that I've got, and I still get, is from breaking the rules and being cheeky in the areas that you're not really supposed to be, but it absolutely paying off. And I buzz because my manager not just believed in me to do them, but actively encouraged me to do it as well. And then 10, my final piece of my memoir is it's less of a point, more of a mantra, but no shit inside out. I got told that on my first day of RG by Lewis Quache, and it has never failed me since. Bring your whole self to work, because your team will as well, and it's the more that they can be themselves, the absolute better. Never be shy about telling your SDRs about how great they are. We all know they've got the hardest job, and they are great, and they absolutely deserve to hear it at every single point, whether it's on KPIs or behaviors. And that's how you'll get to the 2%. That's where the beauty of the role comes from, and that's how you'll stay in front of everybody else as well. But my DMs are always open if anybody ever wants to chat. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Tony. I love that. So many great nuggets that you shared there. So really appreciate that, and really well structured as well. So we've come on to the final bit of the event, which is a panel discussion. So I'd love to see some comments popping up in the chat, some questions, and we're going to invite some of our panelists. We're going to do it in 2 stages. So Rob, Sean, Elaine, and Marco, please come back on, and we'll start answering some of the questions. So please get the questions going in the chat, and we can make sure that we use the rest of this time to answer what you want to talk about. Okay, so while we wait for some questions to come through, Sean, I'll start with you. What's your biggest takeaway from this event then?
Good question. Honestly, like, I could actually just like refer to my notes, and like it would be hard to have just one. I think it really did speak to me the stuff that Marco said in regards to mindset again, and like I know it's kind of something I mentioned, but like I put so much focus on that, and speaking to other SDR leaders as well, and it's like really reassuring to hear how much focus is being placed on that by other SDR leaders as well, because I think it's basically apart from hiring, as I also mentioned, is one of the like really key things to get right. So yeah.
Brilliant. I thought that was a really great point as well. Elaine, what would you say for companies who are hiring SDRs for the first time? What would be the one piece of advice that you'd give them?
I would give them the advice to really define the process before they start on it. So sometimes when we end up speaking to organizations they've got the idea, they definitely want to hire an SDR, they haven't then thought beyond that, and they haven't thought about the actual process of being able to attract the best caliber of individual that they can. And that does start with a well-curated process where everybody understands what it is that they're aiming to achieve and how they're actually going to go about delivering that.
Okay, I love that. Marco, gonna come to you. We've got a question in the chat from Dylan Woodham. So it says that somebody mentioned that we need to excite and challenge potential SDRs during interviews. How would you think about challenging those if you're hiring SDRs at Air Marketing? How would you think about challenging them during that interview process?
That is a great question. That is a really good question. I think it's asking the right questions, isn't it? It's I think it's focusing on what it is that specific SDR wants to achieve within the role. And I think typically you get some fairly structured responses, but it's actually I think it's more about drilling down. Where they see themselves, what exactly do they want from the SDR role, and I think from that we'd be able to extract the right information and the ability within that conversation to I guess challenge each other in that process, isn't it? I think. Yeah,
absolutely. And Rob, I know that you've hired a number of SDRs in different management roles that you've been in. Dylan's asking, would you recommend asking questions like, we've got a number of candidates that are applying to the position, why should we hire you? What do you think the pros and cons are of asking a question like that?
I think the pros with that question is like you're pushing yourself to define like how you are unique, which is really great in an interview. However, I would say the pros is that when you have an established SDR team, how that individual works with the team is critical. So what I would always encourage is, instead of saying what are the pros and cons against hiring me, it's about how would I fit in with that team? What do you think my strengths could be? Because as a manager myself, I know I can't be around all the time, but I really leverage my team to hunt the pack and come together. And it gets those great things like Marco's talked about, get positive energy and keep working together as a unit, even in these COVID times.
Okay, I love that. And Marco and Robert, if I could ask you to jump off so we can get Tony and Rich on here, that would be great. And I've got a question that for David Scott that I'd actually love to ask Tony, because Tony and I have had a conversation on this before. So Tony, if we could get you on, and hopefully we'll get Rich on as well. So Tony, David's asking, do you define a difference in how you develop and manage SDRs that work in enterprise and SMB? And from what I know of Reward Gateway and conversations we've had in the past, I think it'd be really great to share your insight on this.
Yes and no. I think they all need to have the same knowledge base. Obviously, you're looking for somebody in enterprise that is probably a little bit more well versed in what it is that they're doing, because the types of conversations that they're going to be having are going to be with people of absolutely huge teams, and you want to be putting through more quality and less volume to be able to kind of move that process through. But especially with SMB, it is very much it's a numbers game, so to speak, as well. So we definitely start as a foundational level of all of their knowledge, what it is that they need to do, but we take it to just a certain level, so it's less process driven, it's more quality driven. But I think it's always a balancing act to what it is that you want to do. So managing them any differently? No. Manage them all the same. Give them access to different tools at different stages? Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So manage them the same, but potentially some different tools at different stages. I hope that answers your question, David. Rich, coming to you, we've got a great question from Rody here. And the question is, do you find talking about life post SDR, so career progression, is key to highlight during the interview? Is that almost the light at the end of the tunnel? And I've got a feeling I know what you're going to say here, and I'd love to unpack that with you.
I think kind of position it as light at the end of the tunnel makes it sound like it's a terrible job to be doing, and almost kind of makes the SDR feel like, oh dear, like what have I let myself in for the next 2 years? Here's the thing: I've worked with some people who have no interest in becoming an account executive. They enjoy being an SDR. They make decent money being an SDR. They're good at it. And so, and one of the things that we've also seen at Refract is that we've had people who've joined as an SDR, done really well, but actually their future they saw was in customer success, and they've gone on to be brilliant customer success managers. And I think the key there is really painting the picture of like, hey, this is actually we will provide you with the opportunity to grow and develop. It's important that you do this role and that you don't, like, after 6 months think it's like time to move on, because I think you've got to do the hard yards. You've got to get the miles around your belt doing the SDR role before you do want to kind of move on. So yeah, I think it's a balance between saying, hey, don't paint this thing as it's a terrible job to be doing. It's a kind of a means to an end, but just position the fact that you're a company who embraces growth and kind of show people that there is a path to growth at some point in their career.
Okay, I think that's really key. I agree with you. I think if you start talking about the progression at the end of the role, you're not giving the role itself as much focus. And I think that the way that we talk about the role and the respect that comes within the role has to change as well. Okay, we've got a question from Vincent, and Sean, I'm going to get your thoughts on this first, then come back to you, Rich. How do your team position call recordings with GDPR regulations, giving SDRs those extra hurdles to jump through at the start of the call by opening that cold and then saying this call is being recorded? How do you deal with that with Aircall and your team? And then Rich, I'm going to come to you and ask how you deal with that as well.
I don't want to drop our company in any issues of GDPR compliance here. It's not actually, and hey, maybe I could be educated here. It's not something that we actually say at the start of the calls. My understanding was previously that in America, that's something that you definitely have to do, but not so much across EMEA. Maybe Richard has a different answer to that.
Yeah. So here's the thing. This comes up a lot. Is there is general misconceptions that exist about this, and the reality is that the headline is the regulations around call recording, notifying people that calls being recorded, does vary from country to country. So if you look in Germany, It's very strict. You've got to get seek permission or like notify the person the call is being recorded. In the UK, there is no requirement to do it as long as you're doing it for legitimate purposes, one of which is training and coaching. So we've obviously invested a lot of time looking into that. That is the positioning. There's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of stuff about GDPR came in and suddenly the whole thing changed. It's my advice is to understand it better, understand on a regional level, and for those clients that we work with who are in those countries and locations where that is more of an issue, it has never became an issue. Like if SDRs are making calls, as hey, this is Rich calling a recorded line. Can I take 30 seconds to explain why I called? They quickly get very comfortable with it but only in those locations where that is an issue. So hopefully that clears it up.
Yeah, I think that's great. And Jack's also dropped some additional comments in the chat as well. And so before we move to networking, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to James for agreeing to do this event with SalesWorks, and also say a huge thank you to our amazing speakers, Rob, Marco, Sean, Elaine, Tony, and Richard. You all delivered incredible amounts of insight and nuggets of takeaways. So thank you very much for making sure that this event was a success and kicking it off. Also, a big thank you to the sponsors that James mentioned earlier as well. So we've got about 13 minutes or so now to jump into the networking. So if you click the networking button on the left, that will then do a one-to-one roulette, and hopefully you can find some really interesting people to connect with.
Thanks for that, Shabri. Great job co-hosting. Thank you, everybody, for all your efforts. Amazing job. Head to the networking area on the right now. We'll keep this going. So if you want to hang around because you get into an interesting conversation, just let that flow after the 10 minutes and it should allow you to do that. If not, make sure you just plug your LinkedIn contacts in here now. And I've not been tempted to do this, but if you think we should be gathering in some kind of online forum, just say the group. Should it be a Slack, LinkedIn group? If that is actually genuinely of an interest, do plug that. We're still reviewing that with Shabri and the other partners. But that's a wrap, guys, from a content perspective. Thank you again to Sales Loft. If you haven't got an engagement tool, check them out. Obviously, Sean over at Aircall. If you do need SDR, speak to Elaine at Venetrix. If you're looking at sales performance compensation, speak to Varison. If you're looking at coaching and sales readiness from a platform perspective, MindTickle. Shabri's obviously mentioned her workshops, and many people have been through it for later in March. So make sure you contact her and SalesWorks. Speak to Air Marketing if you're looking at driving more leads and activity. And of course, Cognizant for lead gen, Refract for call recording, Sales Psyche for mindset and well-being, and Sales Confidence for good times. I think that's it. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, James.
Thanks so much, James. Cheers. Thanks, Shabri.